Yo, what up? It's Derp here with another video about the IronMace Nexon court case. This video is all about Nexon and a bunch of shady stuff they're doing. Um, I'm going to try to keep this short, but this is a 14-page document filled with evidence and obviously my script. What's important is me and some other true believers are putting in a lot of work to put together a document to help break down Nexon's court case, as well as dispute various issues that have arisen since this whole trial, right? Or this whole court case. There are a lot of things that Nexon has switched stances on, messed up, or possibly even lied about. And I want to make this video and maybe a second video later down the line about what issues Nexon is running into in this court case, as well as how it might impact Dark and Darker. Um, a lot of this is speculation and opinion. However, when I speak about laws, the court cases themselves, and evidence, I will try to be as unbiased and factual as possible. Again, as always, I'm not a lawyer, and this is not legal advice. Please do not cite me for any kind of legal trouble or anything. I'm just a dude on the internet who wants to help the gaming community in any way I can. Some of the people who watched my stream earlier today have seen a little bit of this stuff, but I'm going over all of it in full in this video. So what I'm going to cover, I'm going to do a quick summary on what's been happening with these court cases. I'm going to go over what perjury is. I'm going to go over why perjury is important. I'm going to go over a lot of the evidence that Nexon has submitted, as well as the DMCA itself and the complaint, and explain where they have some either misleading or false or mistaken evidence. I'm also going to give, at the end, as always, I'm going to give my opinion and TLDR. So buckle up, because there's a lot of juicy info in here that could distract or drastically affect from both court cases in Korea and the United States. But before I jump into the video, I want to thank everyone who's been watching, subscribing, and leaving comments. Huge thank you to everybody who's been joining the live streams. There's one person in particular I want to give a huge shout out to. His name is Mike, and I want to thank him for giving my first official super during the live stream today. $10 is going to go a long way to help me getting a new mic, to help getting a new mic stand and a second monitor and all the stuff I need to do to really improve this stream. Huge thank you. Like, this is incredible. I can't thank you enough. Thank you to everybody who's been joining my Patreon. Toka, Julian Alonzo, Nick Gaming, Kraken. Thank you guys all so much for joining my Patreon. You guys are amazing, and your support is incredible. This channel survives because of people like you. So, thanks again. You guys are all amazing. It's humbling and honestly not what I expected. Thank you guys so much. I can't really state that enough. But yeah, let's get to what we came for here. Also, a big thanks to the people who are helping out with the channel, giving information, giving evidence, specifically Oliver, Green Knight, NCR 1996, and Poo Poo Kaka. You guys are all awesome. A lot of this information is yours. So, thanks, guys. You guys are helping me collate data, and this video wouldn't be happening without you guys. So, but yeah, let's get right into it. So, we're here for the delicious Nexon tiers, right? And as always, if you want to skip to the end, there's a TLDR. But so, as most of you already know, Nexon is suing IronMace over allegedly stealing IP and trade secrets. This case is being played out in both the United States and Korea. However, we are coming to find that Nexon may have made several errors while filing evidence, while submitting their DMCA takedown notice, complaint, and the response to IronMace. They have also changed their argument several times over the course of both cases, and may have misrepresented themselves, several gameplay elements, and other issues with their project known as P3. Misrepresenting game elements, mistakes while filing evidence, and changing arguments are all mostly normal in cases like this. However, when done in large quantities, and especially if done with malicious intent, or if done intentionally to mislead the courts, there are very large repercussions that can come from these issues. These repercussions can be anything from throwing out the evidence in question, throwing out the statements in question, throwing out motions altogether. all the way up to dismissal of the case with or without prejudice, and possible fines or jail times for the people who signed off on the documents. It really depends on how egregious the mistakes are, and if the people in question tried to intentionally mislead the court, which would count as perjury. So everything with perjury is intent, but I'll get into that right here. So for those of you who don't know, intentionally lying to the court on documents in trial or intentionally misleading the court is called perjury. According to Cornell law, perjury is whoever, having taken an oath before a competent tribunal, officer, or person, in any case which a law of the United States authorizes an oath to be administered, that he will testify, declare, dispose, or certify truly, or that any written testimony, declarations, depositions, or certificate by him subscribed is true, willfully and contrary to such oath states or subscribes any material which does not believe to be true, or in any declaration, certificate, verification, or statement under penalty of perjury as permitted under Section 1746 of Title 28, United States Code. Willfully subscribes as true any material which he does not believe to be true, is guilty of perjury, and shall, except otherwise expressly provided by law, be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 5 years or both. This section is applicable whether the statement or subscription is made within or without United States. So that's directly from the code for perjury, according to Cornell law. In short, anyone who knowingly lies, that's the important part, knowingly lies in court or an official document. Hey, kitty. Come on, bird. Anyone who knowingly lies in court or on official legal documents is guilty of perjury. This includes declarations, sworn statements, and even DMCA takedown notices. Anyone who signs off on said documents is accountable to follow this law. So they're accountable for perjury. And it says right there at the bottom, like right above the signature, don't sign this unless it's true, because if you do, it can be used against you in court, and you could be held accountable for perjury. So, Birdie wants to say hello. Come on, Bird. So, don't lie in court. Don't lie on court documents. It's not good. So, according to Cornell law, DMCA take notices are classified as a statement that the information in notification is accurate and under penalty of perjury. That the complaining party is authorized to act on behalf of the owner of an exclusive right that is allegedly infringed. So, this means that each official court document showing up on the U.S. docket is classified as a sworn statement, including the DMCA, meaning that they're all subject to perjury law, which is super, super, super important. You can't lie on these things. You can't lie on the DMCA. You can't lie on the complaint. You can't lie on any of that stuff. And I did some digging and looked into Korean law, and I found that this also holds true in Korea. So according to Korean Lee, a Korean legal organization and forum where you could ask questions, I have a link right here, Article 152 is perjury and malicious perjury. A witness who, having sworn according to acts, gives false statements shall be punished by imprisonment for not more than 5 years or a fine not exceeding 10 million won, so around $8,000. As regards to a criminal disciplinary case, so that's for civil, 1 is for civil, 2 is for criminal. Criminal or disciplinary case, a witness who, for the purpose of causing injury to an accused or criminal or disciplinary subject or suspect, commits the crime of the preceding paragraph shall be punished by imprisonment for not more than 10 years. So there's not even a fine, it's just straight to jail. Can a case be thrown out for perjury? According to criminal defense attorney named M.A. Haber from North Miami, Florida, the remedy for perjury is traditionally going to be impeachment of the witness, credibility, and argument for reasonable doubt based thereupon. So what that means is usually not. Usually it'll be like a witness who perjures themselves, and in which case they'll just throw out that witness's testimony and say, hey, you're not allowed to come back and be a witness anymore. If it's evidence that's fake or falsified, what they'll usually do is throw out that evidence. They'll usually just throw out whatever it is and not allow it in court anymore, right? And then anybody who submitted the evidence or the witness in question that committed perjury will then be held accountable. However, cases can be thrown out if the basis for the case, the complaint, was intentionally falsified or the plaintiff commits perjury. So, if the plaintiff themselves commits perjury, that draws the whole case into question because the plaintiff is no longer what's considered credible or a credible witness. Like you can't even. So if the plaintiff is in question, and they are no longer credible in their own court case against somebody else, then the case can be dismissed. But why is all this important? So this is super important to the case for a few simple reasons. False information is stricken from the record and or not allowed into evidence. Documents containing intentionally falsified information can be thrown out or overturned, making them non-enforceable, like the DMCA. Cases can be thrown out entirely if the primary plaintiff commits perjury during the complaint or in a sworn statement. Primary as in the person putting the case forward to begin with, so Nexon in this case. If a representative of Nexon commits perjury while doing business as Nexon and operating in that capacity, whoever's signing the document for Nexon, if they're the one committing perjury, they can have the case dismissed. This form of dismissal can happen with or without prejudice, and that's when a court dismisses an action. They could either do so with prejudice or without prejudice. Dismissal with prejudice means that the plaintiff cannot file the same claim against the court, according to Cornell law. So, with prejudice means that so say this case was to get dismissed with prejudice, it means that Nexon would not be able to file the same lawsuit again against IronMace, at least in the United States. And if one piece of evidence is called into question, any related evidence can be called into question. So if the DMCA itself is called into question, everything on that DMCA is now called into question. If the complaint is called into question, everything in that complaint is then called into question. Other evidence may be called into question or thrown out if it relates to or relies upon falsified, mistaken, or misleading evidence. It's like a domino effect, right? So like, if the zombie isn't true, anything that relates to the zombie might also not be true. Anything related to this might not be true as well. So that's not a legal term. It's just an example. And then if Nexon, the plaintiff, intentionally misled or intentionally lied on the DMCA or the complaint, there's grounds for IronMace to request an immediate dismissal with prejudice, as Nexon has committed perjury and is no longer credible with relevance to this issue. That would be extremely difficult to prove. I'm just going to say that right out the bat. It's really hard to prove perjury, but it's possible. So where's the evidence that Nexon messed up? So this whole section contains a lot of what me and a ton of other Redditors and Discord buddies dug up. I am withholding some of the evidence for a private document to share with IronMace if they wish. So most of this has already been shared around the internet in some capacity and can't really damage IronMace's case in any way. I do want to say that a lot of this evidence has been submitted by people all over Reddit and Discord, and it's not all just mine. And it hasn't all been verified or confirmed. So take all of this with a grain of salt. So, in regard to any opinion, including mine, as just that, a speculation and opinion. Again, I'm not a lawyer, and this is within the territory of speculation. So, from the DMCA, I'll have the link to the DMCA itself in the links below. It shows minor evidence for a difference in one of the first things is this pictures, right? We have the two similar pictures. But this shows evidence. If you look at this picture on the left and you blow it up, it won't really show well on my screen. But if there's a larger image of this picture, and if you blow it up, it shows that it's a battle royale instead of an extraction game. This shows how many teams are left and who's been killed and all that. Like, this team has been eliminated, right? And it also shows a difference in how the fog works, right? All these rooms are randomly going green, and then there's a bigger circle as well. These rooms are filling up with poison gas. These rooms have already been filled up with poison gas. So it's a different type of extraction game. It's not. This is basically blatant evidence that they're lying about what genre. Nexon might be lying about what genre the game is, or P3 was. They also go on to misrepresent the current state of as of the DMCA. Various modes with, they state in this picture below, various modes with different starting player counts. P3 may have had a player count of up to 100 per match by the end of the project. This has not been verified, but if it is true, the DMCA has a clear misrepresentation of evidence. Tanker and Thief were also later added around the same time to the copyright, or it was Tanker and Thief, and then they changed it to Rogue and Fighter shortly around the same time as the DMCA. So they're misrepresenting their class naming convention, and the class system is misrepresented for Dark and Darker as a class, like a leveling class system that can be customized, like in Dark and Darker. But P3 actually had static classes, as we see in evidence from Korea and declarations from Mr. Choi and Terrence that I went over in the last video. So P3 had static classes without leveling or customization. Dark and Darker obviously has leveling. So right here, if you look at this image, is pulled right from the DMCA. Game starting point: 16 users participate in one game. The game starts from selecting characters at a tavern where a user can communicate with other users. So this might be just a straight up lie. Okay, because according to Terrence and Mr. Choi, before the game was scrapped, they had up to 100 players per match. And the maps were much larger, right? So because it was a battle royale, it was a completely different type of game. Character classes consisting of tanker, fighter, barbarian, cleric, thief, rogue, and the wizard ranger. So it used to be tanker, barbarian, cleric, thief, wizard, ranger. They added fighter and rogue and switched the tanker and thief roles around like the day before this DMCA went out. So they're kind of misrepresenting information there. That's going to be kind of sketchy to prove. But it's showing a trend, right? So let's move on to the complaint itself, and this is where things get really juicy. They state in section 105, both games have role-playing RPG elements. This means, for example, that a player's hit points, the amount of damage that player can sustain before dying, increases as the player levels up by gaining more experience. This may have been an outright lie or intentionally misleading statement, because Terrence and Mr. Choi both claim that there was never any leveling system implemented in P3, and if they are being truthful, and they argued this under court under threat of perjury, if they were being truthful and P3 never had any leveling system, this could be very damaging to Nexon's case, because that's just straight up a lie. So, as I said earlier, Fighter and Rogue were added to the copyright possibly P3 data immediately before the lawsuit, after playtest 5 had already happened for Dark and Darker. This might be misleading information, and the court could throw into question how closely Nexon was following Dungeons & Dragons source material, if at all. And their claim is, in P3, players can choose from 1 to 6 classes. It goes over the classes. This set of characters is identical to P3's, and they claim that they were doing so because of Dungeons & Dragons. But the naming conventions, Tanker and Thief, don't go with Dungeons & Dragons at all. So this kind of throws that into question. And if you see here, this is where this box right here is where you can see that the Fighter and Rogue were added way later. So here's our initial filings: P3 playtest, Project P3, Cleric, Barbarian, Ranger, Tanker, Thief, Wizard. They added Fighter and Rogue later. And you could look at this as well. So they're doing shady stuff. So both of the images below this are from Dark and Darker. This has been verified, so I'm talking about these right here, where they say, for example, P3 and Dark and Darker both feature the same fleshy, bald zombie with eyes that light up. Both of these images are from Dark and Darker. This is a screen cap from a recording from playtest 4 for Dark and Darker. This one on the right is from the Dark and Darker wiki. So neither of these photos are from Project P3 at all. And if you look below, we have matched up the actual icons to correspond to what is shown here. This icon is the skeleton icon found only in playtest 4 for Dark and Darker. But yeah, so this has been verified. This is either a lazy mistake or intentional falsification with possible malicious intent. If they can prove somehow, if IronMace can prove that Nexon did this maliciously, would be huge. The image on the left is from gameplay footage from Dark and Darker. Obviously, image on the right is from Dark and Darker wiki, and the image below shows the buffs using a buff list and the skeleton, as I said. And then in this set of images, where they do a comparison between the mimic, the wraith, and the ghost, and then the troll, none of these images are actually on the left are actually associated with P3. All of these images can be found on the Unreal Marketplace. So they basically did a screen cap from the Unreal Marketplace and said that they had these in their game in P3. There's no way to actually verify that these, I mean, they're going to have to later verify that these were in-game files in their evidence, but in this filing and using this as evidence, these are not, this is all just straight up pulled from Unreal Marketplace. None of these images are their images. These aren't P3 game images. These are images that you could find on the internet, on the Unreal Marketplace, just pulled straight from the website, from publicly available assets that you can purchase yourself. Yeah, they're all pulled from Unreal. So this may be intentionally misleading, or Nexon may not have implemented these assets into the game by the time they filed for this. This calls into question the validity of how far along the game actually was, as well as if these assets were even in place by the time P3 was canceled. So saying that you were going to have this in your game at some point and just showing a screenshot that you pulled from the internet isn't the same as actually having them in the game and having them in a build, right? Saying that you might use them later. I could go and say that I'm going to use every single asset from the Unreal Marketplace, and I might use it in a game at some point. That doesn't mean that I have exclusive rights to use it, and it doesn't mean that I have actually implemented it in any game, right? So it calls into question the validity of all of their assets by the time, and we need to see what was actually in place and in a live version of P3 by the time it was canceled, right? Because otherwise none of this holds any water. And that kind of throws their whole argument about assets out the window, because they might not have even had them in P3. We don't know. So they do show this. This is from P3. This is from Dark and Darker. And then they go on to state, for example, Nexon selected the door below on the left for P3 and the Unreal Engine Marketplace, but customized it by making it wider than the stock door. Defendants selected exactly the same door as Nexon for Dark and Darker, and on information and belief, widened it in the same manner. So I kind of went over this on my stream today. The door in question comes with a modular asset pack used in both Dark and Darker and P3's level design. However, it must be modified in order to fit properly with another asset pack also used by both P3 and Dark and Darker. In order to keep the same doors and stay on the theme and use the same asset packs that they already purchased, both Dark and Darker and P3 would have had multiple versions of the same door to accommodate two different styles of modular level design packs. I know this because I have the very same pack in my game, and it was a pain in the ass. Right, I had to modify the door. I'm still modifying it to fit specific door frames. I showed this live on my stream today. I showed a door that I modified that's the exact same door. It just has different banding and a different handle, but I haven't widened it and made it taller yet because I have to make multiple variations of it. But yeah, it looks exactly the same. I don't have a picture of that from my game in this, but I showed it live on stream. I'll have the stream linked in the file in the description. The campfires seen in both Dark and Darker and P3 are included with the above mentioned asset packs. So these same asset packs that have these doors also have the campfires and lighting systems that P3 and Darker use. So the campfire seen in both Dark and Darker and P3 are included with the above mentioned asset packs. The animations used are also included with locomotion assets found on the Unreal Marketplace. These locomotion asset packs are commonly used for multiplayer games because they're one of, like, I think 3 or maybe 4 packs that function properly at scale when used in multiplayer. I used the locomotion pack and this animation pack in my game. At least I have it purchased. I haven't implemented some of it yet. But in P3, players can sit at a campfire. Here's their statement. In P3, players can sit in a campfire to congregate with other players and replenish their health. In Dark and Darker's, players rest in front of a campfire in an identical sitting position. If you look at these campfires, I showed today that these campfires are in my game. Same with the specific lighting elements. But yeah, so let's move on. Statement below, as noted above, P3 takes place in a unique yellow-orange lighting, in addition to taking months of trial and error to perfect. So this goes from 151 directly into 152. In addition to taking months of trial and error to perfect, choosing this lighting required more than a minimum level of creativity to be protected as authorship. Dark and Darker chose precisely the same lighting. This is bullshit. This is 100% bullshit. And this isn't just opinion. This is verified, proven. Unless they're talking, the only way that this can be actually accurate is if they took months to decide whether or not they were going to use this one specific torch from the asset pack that they had already purchased. So if they wasted months trying to figure out if they're going to use this exact torch, this entire statement in 152 is bullshit. And the statement, it's intentionally misleading, false, or a mistake. The orange tint emanating from the campfires and torches are baked in to the blueprints for the assets that they're using. In other terms, they come standard with the assets themselves. Furthermore, the colors do not match entirely because they're using Dark and Darker and P3 are using 2 different assets. I have both of them. Both assets come with the above mentioned asset packs. So there's like these dungeon crypts and medieval dungeon asset packs, and one of them has this torch, one of them has this one. And it's as simple as that. Both assets come with above mentioned asset packs. I know this because I have the exact same color scheme, and I didn't have to change anything. I also proved this in my live stream today. I opened up my game files and added new lights from the asset packs directly without modifying them. And I didn't have to change anything other than adding a post-processing volume to adjust the brightness and contrast, as seen in image SB1. So I took a screenshot. So this is with an environmental fog on, which is a artistic choice for me that I haven't edited yet. But if you look, the torches and fire, I have both. Here's one torch, here's the second. Boom. And I didn't modify any of the color scheme, and it's very close. It looks slightly different because obviously they have more contrast in theirs, and I have fog on. If I went through and I turned fog off and up the contrast, and it looks almost exactly the same. So this entire claim is just, in my opinion, bullshit. Either severely mistaken, intentionally misleading, or just false. And then if you look at this image, Nexon has been saying that their game is competing in the same marketplace and genre as Dark and Darker. So P3 was competing in the same marketplace and genre as Dark and Darker. This image that they're using as evidence for the bubble actually proves as evidence that they're in 2 completely separate genres. Dark and Darker is an extraction. P3 was a battle royale. And this has proof right here. Last man standing, team 2 is team 2. There is no last man standing system in Dark and Darker because it's an extraction game. It's not a battle royale. The image below on the left, there's evidence of Battle Royale gameplay seen in the Last Man Standing text. However, Nexon has made multiple claims that Dark and Darker are competing within the same market and genre. In my opinion, both things cannot be true. They cannot both compete for the same market while also being in separate genres. It's just, that's opinion, but it's just kind of shows a trend, right? Nexon is falsifying a bunch of shit, or misrepresenting a bunch of stuff. So the statement in the image below, so this one, in both games, so this is 159, section 159, there are potions that provide restorative powers. In P3, the potion flask lights up and is fastened to the character's waist. This is all claims from Nexon under threat of perjury. While restorative potions are a common feature in dungeon crawlers, the light up feature and placement of the flask are unique to P3. Moreover, returning to the theme of light and dark in P3, Nexon developers consciously added the light up feature, which illuminates. So this is important. Consciously added the light up feature, which illuminates the surrounding settings. Defendants copied the unique potion flask that lights up and the placement of the flask at the character's waist on Dark and Darker. So they're saying Dark and Darker copied with the same flask placement and the fact that the flask lights up. Again, this is complete bullshit. And I know because I have the same potion pack. Why? Because it's the only one that has proper fluid dynamics out of the entire Unreal Marketplace. In the statement below, it is either intentionally vague or misleading. Intentionally misleading. The potion pack and liquid effects system used in the creation of both P3 and Darker comes from the glowing potions as a standard. As seen in Unreal Image, I have a link to the Unreal Marketplace. It's a pack called Real Liquid X Liquid Material Blueprint. And it comes with a screenshot. So I've attached a screenshot. Hey, same color even. Look at that. So this is Real Liquid X. Their potion pack. It adds fluid dynamics. So if your character tilts, the fluid will speak level. You know, it'll stay level no matter where the bottle is. So that's how, like, when you get the drinking animation, it's leveled to wherever the character is holding it. And it actually shows it being drank or drunk. It shows it going down. So that's just either a blatant lie, a huge mistake, or falsification of evidence. I've attached a screenshot here, and it's the same exact potion they're using right there. Like, boop. It's easy. Like, they're not even trying to hide this stuff. It's, like, embarrassing. But yeah, we're getting towards the end of it. Sorry about the longer video. The statement in the image below is either intentionally misleading, wrong, or P3 has been updated after it was officially canceled. And the statement is in section 165, due to the nature of P3 where players venture through the dungeon to collect items and fight monsters, the players are scattered throughout the dungeon. P3 team thought long and hard about how to bring together the players scattered about the dungeon to a central location so that players could combat one another. Ultimately, Nexon implemented a creative solution of spatial control feature in P3 in the form of a poison fog that would guide players to a certain location of the dungeon where other players are located. Defendants implemented the same spatial control feature, renamed the Dark Swarm, that forces players to a central location or a certain location in the dungeon in Dark and Darker. So that statement is either misleading or wrong, or P3 updated after it was canceled, apparently. According to Terrence and Mr. Choi, P3 did not have a large circular poison fog. Instead, rooms filled up with poison gas as the games progressed. So, like, as the game went longer, certain rooms would fill up with poison gas. And then some rooms would just become like you can't go in there at all, and then you would go in and you'd be poisoned. Whereas Dark and Darker used a more standard closing circle found in almost every single battle royale or extraction game ever created. It's not a unique feature. So this is intentionally misleading, false, or vague on purpose, and might not even be true. But yeah, there's a lot more information and evidence that I'm still sifting through, but this is about all I can verify for right now. And at least the stuff that I'm willing to show and discuss in video. Some of the stuff is more confidential in nature that you can find and look through if you look through enough of this stuff, but you have to, like, kind of cross-reference a lot of stuff, and I want to save some of the stuff that hasn't really been exposed on Reddit and Discord. A lot of this stuff already has. There's some tidbits in here that haven't. But yeah, for the sake of time and wanting to actually help IronMace if I can in any way, I think this should be enough to kind of establish so people can establish their own opinion and to establish a history of Nexon's claims and establish some of the validity of Nexon's claims. But yeah, what does all this mean? What's the TLDR? In my opinion, there are only a few explanations that make sense for the amount of discrepancies shown in the DMCA and complaint. Nexon themselves do not have enough information to adequately inform the court about their own game, which would call the entire lawsuit into question. Like, if they don't even have any clue about what their own game is about, like how are they going to argue this in court in any kind of reasonable manner? Either that, or they are still working on P3 and have changed it to better fit the lawsuit, which would call into question the lawsuit as well. Because if they're still working on the project and they're retroactively changing the game to be more similar to Dark and Darker, then it's the other way around, right? Then Dark and Darker should be suing Nexon. P3 should be, or IronMace should be suing Nexon. So that would call the lawsuit into question. People not associated with P3 or who came in late might have helped them establish these documents. So people who weren't really working on P3 for the most of the time, because Mr. Choi and Terrence said that there was only 10 people, and most of those people went on to join IronMace. So all the new people that were added later, the other 10 new people that were added to P3 at the end, might be the ones helping them establish this evidence, and they might not know what they're talking about. So that would call into question all of the evidence that they're giving because they weren't around the whole time. They don't know the whole story, and they don't know the ins and out. They might not know the ins and out of the project. And if they're the ones helping with these documents, then they literally every single piece of evidence that they put into record might be called into question. Or the Nexon's lawyers and whoever compiled this information are lazy and did not check their facts. That's entirely possible. I highly doubt that, but it's entirely possible. In which case, then they deserve to have this case thrown out or this evidence thrown out. Or, Nexon's lawyers or whoever compiled this information intentionally left out, modified, or changed information, images, and context. They could be intentionally misleading. They could be being truthful but omitting a lot of facts and other information. Or, there's always the option of Nexon just blatantly committing perjury. But I'm not really entirely sold on any one of these arguments. My assumption is that it's a mixture of 1 and 5. I don't think Nexon would blatantly commit perjury and knowingly commit perjury because they don't want to go to prison and they don't want to get fined and they don't want to have this case thrown out. And their lawyers definitely wouldn't commit perjury on their behalf because they would get disbarred and possibly go to jail. So that's very highly unlikely. And to me, the simple answer is that the DMCA just seemed completely negligent in both representation of facts and evidence. So most of what they provide in the claim is either misleading, false, or mistaken, or there's a lot of truth omitted. But at the end of the day, what really matters with perjury is intent. So they could omit truths and bend the truth a little bit, but it really depends on if there was intention or not, right? So if they were intentionally misleading the court and intentionally lying and intentionally committing perjury, then Nexon would be in trouble. But they would have had to knowingly lied on these documents, and IronMace's lawyers would have to then prove it. And that's the hard part, so proving that they were lying on these documents is going to be everything. Because without that, there's no perjury. Perjury is 100% a crime of intent. So to get the case thrown out on perjury is going to be extremely difficult. And I don't think that, people saying, oh, Nexon perjured themselves and all this stuff, that's very unlikely. Like the chances of that are like 1%, and the chances of proving that are like also 1%. So you have like 1% of 1% chance of getting this case thrown out due to perjury. Um, so will the case get thrown out on perjury? Probably not. Does this call a lot of Nexon's arguments and evidence into question? In my opinion, undoubtedly. Like there is no chance in hell that the judge is going to look at all of this evidence, and if IronMace's lawyers say anything similar to what I'm saying here, or like bring up any of this stuff, which I guarantee you they will have a lot more information than I have, because their lawyers are a lot smarter and a lot more thorough than I am. One of their lawyers is equal to a team of 10 of people who aren't lawyers. So, um, I could easily see a ton of this information getting thrown out. In my opinion, the DMCA might even get thrown out just because of the lack of faith, like they might not be able to uphold the DMCA in the United States just based on a lack of evidence and a bad faith argument, right? Which is entirely possible. If everything that the DMCA is built upon is not credible, then you can't uphold the DMCA. That's like how it works. Like you can't uphold a document that's not credible. So that is entirely possible. Do I think it will happen? Maybe, maybe not. But yeah, there it is. I hope you guys liked the video. Don't forget to like, follow, subscribe. Sorry, I'm needing a drink. It's like 90 degrees in my office. Don't forget to like, follow, subscribe. I'm trying to upgrade my streaming setup and my recording rig. It's going to be a little spendy. I need a second monitor, a new mic, and a dedicated camera. I'm going to get the mic first, then probably the monitor, and the phone seems to be working okay as a camera for now. But yeah, if you want to help out, please consider joining the guild by following the YouTube membership link below. Again, I love you guys. You guys are all freaking awesome. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching the streams, me live. Thanks for the comments. Thanks for everything. You guys are changing my life. And thanks again. Peace.